everybody? This is Jacob Shoup. You're watching the Tom O'Brien Show. We finally got the cameras back on. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Quite an interesting day, of course. Tariffs seem like they've been averted, at least for Mexico. I believe Trump is in discussion again with Trudeau right now. Honestly, this was a relatively resilient market, I would say, all things considered, especially, threatening a just flat tariff of 25%, of course, on both Canada and Mexico, 10% on China. Of course, I also think what's going on is you have a bunch of people who are from around the world who are dumping money in to the American market as well, which kind of can offset that, right? Why not, right? If they're all considered that, if they're all concerned rather that their markets are going to collapse under kind of similar conditions, why would you not place some money into the U.S. market? Some of the stuff that's kind of interesting, I want to talk about with Canada for a little bit regarding the tariffs. So regardless of what happens, I think we're keeping tariffs most likely on lumber. And this is a really unique, as an interesting rabbit hole I went into this weekend, really last night. And it's about the U.S.-Canadian softwood lumber just conflict we've been having since the 80s, right? And so while, like I said, I don't believe that there will be a flat 25% tax, or tariff rather, on Canada, I do think some key sectors are going to get hit, namely softwood lumber. And again, this has been going on. So essentially what happens is the Canadian government really owns a lot of the lumber, right? And they subsidize the stumpage fees, that is to cut the wood down. We really don't like this, of course, because we try to do free market dynamics. At least our lumber production is privatized. And so this can kind of screw up our lumber providers. So starting, I think, in the 80s, they had something called, countervailing duties, which is just meant to offset the subsidies, right? Canada very much did not like this and didn't agree with it. And I almost agree with them from a legal perspective, right? Because as the law says, and this is the agreement that we all reach, right? When you do trade with other countries, everyone needs to respect each other's kind of trade regulations. Countervailing duties can only be placed, at least this is how it's working with the lumber and has been, on commodities that are used within a specific industry. And that is quite clearly not applicable to softwood lumber. You could use it in any industry that you wanted it, and it is. And so you've had this kind of trade battle that's been going on for quite a while, and it escalated in August of last year, 2024, when Joe Biden raised the duty from 8% to, I believe, something like 14.8%, which is quite an insane increase. And so as far as things are with Trump are concerned, this is not a 0% no tariff thing. We're raising it up 25%. He might be doubling it roughly. Maybe like 70% increase from the current rate. But I don't see him really giving on that, right? Even if all the other tariffs don't get applied. So this is something really interesting. I had no idea about this whatsoever. I think if you had just been watching the news, you would have thought everything was totally fine and we're importing this lumber with no duties imposed on it, and it's just not the case. So I really recommend, researching some more if these tariffs come to pass, right? Researching what the current rates are, why they are the way that they are, and can maybe probably give you a better insight into what actually will receive these kind of tariffs. I thought that was super fascinating. I had no idea. So we'll see what happens with Canada. It seems that the tariff imposition was deferred on Mexico until about a month from now. Mexico is putting 10,000 National Guards on their border. Of course, the whole, at least public conversation around this is to try to stymie the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. So, I don't know. Man, interesting times. There are years when nothing happens, and there's weeks where years happen, Forget who said that. Let's take a look right now on the SPY. You're off about 0.44%, and this is a pretty decent movement to the upside throughout today, right? If I can get back here, you get some nice movement, some hot to the upside when this market opened, and then you close, or you settle lower than where you were prior, and then really just some pretty stellar buying to the upside. I believe that was probably on the communication about Mexico. And then we've stayed really consolidated for quite a while, up until about 1 $540, and now we're moving even higher, and we keep kissing that 600 level, still at $599.11. What I still think is a little bit weird with the SPY itself is that you've been trying to make back to all-time highs after these. We've had two large gap downs now. One with DeepSeek and potentially the yen the yen carry trade blowing up, and then of course with tariffs over the weekend. And it has not gained the steam to get back up to all-time highs, and that makes me a little bit hesitant to say, all right, this bull rally is still going. We're going to make all-time highs, no matter what. I don't necessarily see a huge blowdown in the SPY, but I can see some anticipation, at least for sideways movement. I think that people are still not sure what the heck Trump is going to do. I think that's putting fear in the market. The only thing I believe that's floating this in a major way is that other, nations essentially are buying in here. So that is really something to consider. And it makes me nervous. Some of the bigger guys, we're going to talk about NVIDIA a little bit. We're certainly going to talk about Tesla as well. Tesla's in a bad way right now. But NVIDIA still off about 2%. Obviously, you've had some recovery since the open, but that is lagging behind the SPX itself. So that's something to consider. I think this is a perfect moment for some of this capital that has been just ham-fisted into the Magnificent Seven to come back out from it, okay? I think people are still, what you saw yesterday with everything selling off, even gold, I know gold is doing quite well right now, trading at 2,858, just a little bit off its lows, but you had a sell-off last night, right? Around 9, 10 o'clock, and this is fear of liquidity, right? Or fear of illiquidity, rather, right? So, you get tariffs imposed at a flat rate, that creates illiquidity. So people are trying to get cash heavy. They said, okay, maybe this is not such a big deal. Of course, you have a lot of interesting stuff going on with gold, of course, leaving from London, going into New York. There's an arbitrage opportunity there. If of course, the tariffs were imposed on gold, I'm not sure if they will be, and then what happens if that's not the case. Probably nothing. They probably won't move them back until there's some other kind of disparity between prices between those two locations. Folks, please stay right there. We're going to be right back with Steve Rhodes, Mastering Probability, right after this break.